Folks, welcome to So Bad It's Good with Ryan Bailey. This is your pal Ryan, and this is your Monday episode. This is a pop culture roundup with Sophie Ross. And if you want to skip to that right now, there is a timestamp in which you can do that. But before then, I wanted to talk about something that I don't talk about a lot. I talk about stories in regards to this show, but I don't talk about usually the episodes themselves. But since tonight was the season finale, maybe series finale of Real Housewives of New Jersey, I feel like we should talk about it. I just watched it, so I am fresh. I'm trying to formulate some thoughts in my mind to be able to express what I thought about this finale. Insert fart noise right here. No, I'm joking. No, it was let's see. We're ripping the band-aid up. Let's talk some hard truths. Let's talk about this show. Let's talk about it as a family where we don't get all upset at each other. And I know, it's not just the cast that are at war with each other. A lot of the people that cover this show or talk about this show, we tend to take this so personally, and everybody has so much skin in the game for some reason. And I think that shows how popular and how good of a show this has been in moments. Like, really, Real Housewives of New Jersey, since it came on the map, it just really came. It was such a juggernaut. It's such a force. And, now, I mean, how many seasons? This is we're at the 14th season. 14 seasons of this show. My God, that is a lot of seasons. And so what this has become, it's a show about family, right? And that's what Jersey did better than any other show, because you really sensed how the Jersey cast and how these group of people and how, you could even say Italian Americans, how they really view family and how deep it is, their love for each other, and sometimes their anger for one another. I mean, everybody always compares it to The Godfather or Goodfellas or anything like that, just because it takes place in Jersey and there's Italians. But this show has provided so many historical moments to the Bravo lexicon, just point blank. And like I say, and I even say with Sophie later on, because we do mention something about Jersey, and I always have to preface this because I feel people are so sensitive about their favorites, their favorite housewives. And it's hard because I want to be able to talk honestly about my opinion, but I will say I don't really have malice towards any of these cast members. And I always have to really reiterate what a legend Teresa Giudice is, even though I'll never truly learn how to say her last name. I mean, really, she is a Mount Rushmore housewife. Point blank. She is one of the top, period. But I think a lot of the times, like I've said many times, this show is kind of shackled around Teresa's legend. Teresa's, really just such a powerful force that it really is hard to get away from Teresa's impact, because it is so large, this impact. But it has created so many fractured relationships in its wake. And I'm not saying Teresa's at fault for those fractured relationships, but I feel like with this season, and it's not just Teresa, we have come to a point where it is really seeming to be like unworkable. It's not even just the audience at home that sometimes we're like, oh God, this is boring. We've seen this. Like, there are moments of levity and there are moments of genius still. There really are. There are people in here that are still clocking in. But there's also this sense, and you watch it in this finale, especially when they're at Rail's restaurant, you can tell that these ladies are bored with each other. These ladies are bored with this same bullshit again and again and again. I mean, when did housewives become like private investigators? When did these all people, like, they become PIs, uncovering mysteries about each other? Social media and ex-girlfriends and who cheated on who, and all. I mean, it's all like uncovering things, and who did you meet with, and who did you DM, and which content creator did you reach out to and give screeners to? It's become this whole other thing instead of actually just working on the relationships between these ladies. Because I mean, when the internet becomes like a 10th cast member, that's bad. That's not good. That can't be good for any of these people out there. So aspects of this finale were entertaining, but I will say, man, God, I love Andy Cohen, but my God, Andy, another time where you said, listen, you're gonna see the finale, and you're gonna see why we don't even need a reunion. Oh, everything was said. Everything was said that could possibly be said was said at this finale. Well, no, that is not shocking. That is not the case at all. I understand why you don't have a reunion, because you're not going to get any more straight answers than you got out of that scene. But that's different than saying, all of your itches are going to be scratched. That, none of, I mean, I still have so many itches. There are so many questions. But if nobody's truly going to actually tell the truth, if nobody's going to listen, then it's going to truly fall on deaf ears. We're not going to have any reliable narrators, even though they've tried to make Dolores the reliable narrator. I mean, they really, the show ends with Dolores at Rails, the aftermath of Rails. And I thought, how interesting. If this show never comes back again, the last shot is Dolores. The last shot is Dolores. That's very interesting. And I guess that's the only person that still will talk to both sides of whatever stupid war that we're in right now. So, oh gosh, where do I start? I mean, there's so many little pieces that I would love to mention about this, but yeah, you don't do that reunion because there's going to be nothing that comes from it, even though there's a lot of information I'm still curious about. And I will say a couple, man, it's almost I feel like it's the Jackie Goldschneider stuff. I mean, it was so strangely poetic and humorous in a weird way, except that you realize Jackie is a real person. And I can't imagine having felt great about that when Jackie's walking out of Rail's restaurant after what happened. Now, if you haven't watched the Jersey finale and you're planning to, maybe just skip right ahead to Sophie regardless. But basically, Teresa last episode had a whole meeting with her lawyer and Gia and all your friends to explain that Margaret reached out to one of Louis' exes and was feeding information to Margaret. Okay, so this also brings up this week's episode of Real Housewives of Orange County of did Heather Dubrow call the paparazzi? It's all of these fights about who is contacting who knows what. And sometimes it's a little ridiculous and laughable, but I know they consider it very serious. But Margaret saying, no, I did talk to Louis' ex. I did, but I never met with her. I never, and then Margaret drops this bomb at the Rails restaurant saying, I didn't meet with her, but Jackie did, and literally has the exact date. And Jackie's right there. So this is the second time this season that Jackie has been totally humiliated by her own actions, but also because Margaret threw that information out there. And, they said, oh, that's to save yourself, Margaret. I think just Margaret's like, no, I'm not going down for this. So, I think Margaret's line was like, you subpoenaed the wrong bitch or something like that. It was wild. So Jackie has to then explain, well, I did meet with her. And then in a talking head, we see from Jackie explaining, well, yeah, I did meet with her because at that time they were trying to get information and saying that my husband cheated. It's like this tangled web we weave of, okay, the chicken before the egg, what came first? And, Jackie explaining, yeah, well, I did do that. And at the time they were coming after my marriage, and that was very serious. And it was during the Gia thing when she said, oh, what if Gia did coke at, right? Remember that the first episode a couple seasons ago when Teresa lost it at Jackie? That was that season, she said. And so that was understandable. But my thing is, Jackie's explaining all this, and it reminded me of all this shit that they actually tried to get on Jackie and try to ruin her relationship, which once again then makes me really confused why Jackie would want to be friends with Teresa now. Oh, that's water under the bridge. That sounds fucking intense even when I hear it back now. But, and this is the other embarrassing thing, is that it's pretty much stated again from Jen Aiden and Dolores. It's Teresa hears that in the moment, but they all well, who knows if Teresa really heard it. Sometimes she has a delayed reaction. Imagine if you were the friend that everybody's like, he might not have got that. He might understand that tomorrow. Delayed reaction. And I was like, damn. You could tell the love and respect and admiration they all have for Teresa. I mean, Jen Aiden and even they all, Dolores, and they really treat her with kid gloves a lot of the times. But imagine being that friend where they're pretty much calling you a slow adult in some ways. And I just find that weird. Wait, what? It was so it was just very sad of like, well, maybe Teresa didn't fully understand it yet. But then Teresa in a talking head does understand it, but like, oh, it's water under the bridge. Listen, if her main hatred focus is Margaret. So, like she's not like, I don't care about Jackie. I care about taking down Margaret. And that's the whole point, is that nobody's listening to each other. Nobody's sitting there to actually take in the reality of these situations. And I'm not saying Margaret's never done anything wrong. Obviously, Margaret plays the housewife game. But at the same time, if nobody's going to listen, if nobody's going to literally listen to the words that are being said and still hanging on to anger because the actual information doesn't service my thesis statement of who I want to take down, then it just gets thrown out. And I think that's like the big hang up of this show, is that like actual facts are then presented and it still just doesn't matter. It doesn't make a dent because they are so laser focused in their hatred for each other. I mean, there were so many also just gross moments on this. I mean, Teresa calling Melissa a whore, and like Melissa teasing Teresa and doing the posing, which was fun and funny to watch. But then you realize how dark and serious it is because they truly are family. And Teresa's out there just throwing like, "You're a whore, you're a whore." Like, oh my God. Oh my God. But the Jackie shit, man, this is what like, and I talked to Jackie, what, a year ago at Betches? She was so nice to come in, talked about her beautiful book. And that was when she was rumored to be coming back to Jersey. And she was like, listen, I'm doing things here and there. Who knows what's going to happen? And, I think one of the weirder moves this season was the Jackie move to Teresa and Jen, because not that it's weird to be friends with them, just because I didn't think it was earned. I didn't think that was completely earned. And there was such a weird, like even Teresa admitted during the season that, she's just being friendly, not for real reasons. That it's like, God, what a way to cheapen a friendship or an olive branch. Like it all just seemed like it was just a friendship based on hatred. But that's why you got to always be careful what you wish for. Like Jackie got back on the show, but at what cost? Like she had to embarrass herself multiple times. And then it was like a Scooby-Doo ending at the end of like, it was Jackie all along. It was Jackie Judas Goldschneider. I would have got away with it too if it weren't for you rascally kids. Like that's what it almost came up with. And then we have this sad walk away of Jackie at the end, kind of just like looked like she'd been sucker punched, trying to hold her head up high. And I just thought, wow, this is what happens when I just felt like that whole coming to Teresa and Jen, it just felt like a power move, and it would have been, but it just ended where it got a lot of egg on her face. It put the spotlight on her when it didn't need to be. Because also, I don't blame Jackie for meeting with Louis' ex. If somebody was going after my relationship and stuff like that, yeah, I would open up a file on him. Sure. No, but that's how it all played out. But it's overall sad. I mean, there are a couple funny, like Jen Fessler left, like it seemed like right at the beginning of the Rails restaurant, because it truly did go off the rails because Danielle and Jen immediately went into a fight immediately. And I will say this, as a man with, I think, decent man boobs, justice for man boobs, justice for moves. I mean, Jen Aiden threw out that Danielle's husband has man boobs. And I just don't appreciate that guy. How dare you, Jen Aiden? Listen, Travis Kelce will one day have man boobs. And that's the person that's going to marry your beloved Taylor Swift, Jen. So you should apologize to Taylor right now. But you throw out shit like that, man. Like these people are playing dirty. And then Jen Fessler was like, you know what? Nothing can be solved here. I don't want to be a part of this darkness. You don't want to be a part of this darkness. Some of these people were made in this darkness. You don't want to be in this darkness. Girl, this is Housewives. You got to show up, suit up, go out there and play. And I understand it because Jen, I think, is a lot of us where it is like, this is kind of ridiculous. So it was a power move, but at the same time, I really don't know. I mean, listen, this season to me is a little bit of a write-off in a lot of ways, but I thought that was such a weird move of Jen Fessler just leaving. Just like, you know what? Nothing good's going to come out. I could have told you nothing good was going to come from this. You all knew nothing good was going to come from this. Like we were never going to see a path forward, friendship, hugging. This isn't the sisterhood of the traveling pants. I mean, this isn't Love Island USA where all the girls kumbaya. This is this is the 11th season of VPR, baby. People are starting to listen to Tom Sandoval again. That's the darkness we're talking about in Jersey. And the other big aspect of this, and you know, unfortunately, we do have to talk about it, and I know we're all scared to talk about Louis. Um, and I've always tried to be really nice about the Louis thing because it does seem like they're very much in love. But Louis doesn't do himself any favors when we get a scene of them all prepping to go to Rails, and Teresa is talking to Louis, and Louis just says some flat out disgusting things, just some really, really gross things about Margaret and her kids. Louis tells Teresa in that scene, says, I'm like, I hope Margaret and her family suffer. I hope her son suffers. I mean, literally says this, and he says it with such a passion and an underlying anger that it really is scary. I mean, we see Louis in all of these nice scenes, these like kumbaya scenes, you know, visualization, you know, saying all of these like prophecies of love, which is, you know, very beautiful. But then there's this other Louis that we see, and of course, standing up for his wife, right? But then some of this shit, like, you're not going to beat those allegations of calling Margaret's son at work and stalking if we have you on film saying stuff like this. And the whole time, you guys, he's been wearing this shirt the last 2 episodes that says transcend. Take your shirt's fucking advice. Transcend, Louis. You know, you're so careful, I think, around camera, but then you have a moment like this, which, talking about careful around camera, this made me remember, and I've talked about this a couple times on the show, that I was like, oh, we're going to eventually see Louis and Teresa kind of have a little fight. I remember seeing it in the season trailer. And so we didn't see that tonight. So I was like, where is that scene? Am I just imagining that scene? And I went to the trailer, and it's like 1 minute and 58 seconds into the trailer. And Margaret tells, it's a little bit of a Franken edit. So there's a little bit of a manipulation in the actual trailer already. But Margaret says to Joe Benigno, oh, he's going to find out that Louis pissed her money away.
When I need my money laundered, I'll call you. I want it to be better.
It's not going to be better. I don't want to talk about it. What's going on with you?
So did you hear that? I want it to be better. It's not going to be better. I don't want to talk about it. And Louis walks past Teresa angrily in that trailer. It's like they're outside. There's another person, like a kid, in that scene, but I don't know what that's about. And we will never see it because it didn't make this season. Now, that's happened before. Jersey is not the first, you know, show to put something in a season trailer or a mid-season trailer that doesn't make it onto the episodes. We've seen that in Vanderpump Rules before. It does happen, but I will say it's very frustrating when we have all of these accusations, and a lot of them come from Louis. A lot of them are involving Louis. You know, not really even so much Teresa, the Louis. And so Louis becomes this other kind of huge cast member. But anytime it's brought up, Teresa immediately sees red because that's her husband. But we never get any clarification of any of it. I'm even confused why Teresa hates Margaret at some point. You know, like, I'm like, wait, what exactly went down again? Can everybody explain this to me? Re-explain this to me. Because it just seems like a white hot burning hatred. And Margaret doesn't like Teresa either, but Margaret kind of like, it's almost like sitting back. I feel like she's like, okay, yeah, great. Well, I didn't do that. I'm gonna now have to throw Jackie completely under a bus and make a lesson out of her. But the Louis stuff, we still don't have questions from last season about all of this stuff with Bo Dietl and Louis. It's really confusing. Like, what actually is going on with their financial situation? Like, I have to imagine it's somewhat of a happy household because all of Teresa's kids seem like they like Louis. Like, if it's a big conspiracy, how deep does it go? And I don't like to be conspiratorial. The kids seem happy. You figure at least Gia, who's actually going to be on that new Made in Manhattan show on Bravo, that something would come out. Like, and I'm not saying that kids know everything that's going down, but you usually get a vibe in a house of things that are potentially awry. That if someone's acting one way on camera and one way off camera, and it really is hard to watch because we all do, even if, like, come on, we all love Teresa in a way. We do. You want her to, we want her to see her happy. I mean, I think we can all at least say that somewhat, right? I will say that ever since Louis has come into Teresa's life in terms of the show, it has made it seems like it's really swallowed up a lot of Teresa's storyline, and it's caused a lot of friction in that entire group. Now there is that concept of like winning the show and losing in your actual life, or winning in your actual life and losing on the show. So I think maybe this is a little bit of, with the Louis, it's like kind of seems like a big loss at times in terms of how it's presented on the show, or how many people actually have issues with Louis on the show. Now, listen, their personal life, Teresa might be over the moon, might be the best thing that's ever happened to her in her life. And I really do hope that is the case, because she's obviously gone through a lot. And you don't want Teresa just to be somebody else's puppet or being told what to think, feel, because she's a very strong woman. She's come this far. We've seen her, really go through everything on this show. But the Louis, it seems like once he's come onto this, it's I mean, just think about how many relationships. There's always been fractured relationships. There's always been fights, but at some point they've always been able to come together. But the Louis of it all seems like that's made it close to impossible for this entire group as a whole. And that's why you've really seen kind of two separate jerseys a lot this season. And I don't want to leave out the other people like the Jen Aiden and Danielle fight at Rails tonight, where Danielle said, listen, I think you're at home at night and you cry and you want my life. And like, yes, we know that she's not talking about, money. Jen Aiden obviously is amazing at money, like, doing very well. And her husband's doing very well for their family. We see it. Big house, big cars, big everything. But at the same time, I do believe that there is a world in which Jen is sad at night sometimes, and that we have seen cracks in their marriage because they actually have shared that on the show. But I also think we don't really get to see a lot of Jen's storyline because sometimes her loyalty to Teresa has made it really hard for this show to move forward. And it's really hard because how do you have a show that, like I said earlier, is based around family? The Jersey, Real Housewives of New Jersey, each Housewives franchise kind of has its own unique vibe and thing. And like I said, Jersey's is family. So if if family is the intellectual property of Jersey, then how all of a sudden is their new intellectual property just fractured relationships that can never be repaired? It's come from a show about family to a show about hate, and a show about not being able to move forward. And that's why I think, the gears are grinding to a halt, because the show, like I said, is still enjoyable. It still gets decent ratings. We still show up week after week, but these people are never going to come together in some kind of big Marvel's Avengers and like, save the day. They're going to put aside their differences for the good of the common man. I don't sense that with this cast ever at all, ever again. Like, so much shit has happened. And they say now that maybe not a reboot, but they will not be filming until sometime in 2025, if at all. So, some people said this is the last episode of Jersey ever. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Maybe they're waiting for things to cool off. Maybe they're waiting to see where certain court cases land, certain things with people's lives. And I also am not, a lot of people are like, oh, they've got to keep Teresa just to see, when Louis eventually has to go to jail or something. I don't think any of that. I don't know how real any of that stuff is. But I also think Bravo very much cares about Teresa. Even aside like from commerce and business, I think they do care. Like, she's been day one. So I think there is a lot of concern for her. But in terms of the show, it just grinds it to a halt. So like, Margaret's out there doing great housewife work. Whether you like Margaret or don't like Margaret, she's out there being a housewife. But you can only work with what you have around you, and who's willing to listen, who's willing to take in what you're saying. And it's just a bunch of people. I mean, it's just very messy, no matter how you cut it. Like, even if you're a Housewives fan, even if you love this season, you have to admit this is weird and messy. And the fact that it ends with throwing Jackie under the bus. And that's the big reveal of the season, where everything, oh, it was Jackie, but then you're like, yeah, Jackie had every right to meet with Louis' ex. And also, I assume that every housewife and every person on Bravo is meeting and talking with everyone's ex on DMs. These people are all collecting information on each other. That's the new way you play the housewives game in this last decade, it seems like. God, they all should have, some like waiter from Rail should have just brought in a cop without a badge book and thrown it on the table and said, ladies, you're being ridiculous. Don't throw away a good thing. Mend fences. So that was kind of it. I mean, that's that's the whole kit and caboodle. I wish there was so much more to dissect, but we've talked this thing to death. That's the thing, is that like the cast is kind of bored with it. I think some of us are kind of bored with it. Like, I think maybe that's like this insatiable need to get all of this personal information, and you see it spouted off from these bloggers and stuff that a lot of people in the cast seem to be reaching out to. Like, it's gotten nasty and dirty, and then like people are saying, like, people are swearing on their kids all the, let's stop swearing on your kids all the time. I mean, it's gotten just so, a show that I recognize because I recognize the ladies, but in a lot of ways, it's just so far from, you know, OG. And it's not like they didn't have problems in the old days. We all saw the christening episode, which I bring up every week, which I think is just fantastic television. Also, I will say, Dolores has never looked better. Oh my God, how stunning did she look in that final scene? Wow. I mean, just really, really gorgeous. But if you're going to end the series with Dolores, you got to end the series with Teresa. So I don't think this show is going away forever. I don't. Listen, at the end of the day, I blame Juicy Joe, because if Juicy Joe, his relationship with Nono, you remember, like, he had that really strong relationship with Nono, and remember when Juicy Joe, he wasn't working and he was drinking all the time and doing whatever. He was hanging out with Nono, and you know, Joey Gorga was working and being with Melissa and the kids, and Juicy Joe, he infected Nono's mind, and this got everything set off at the christening with my father. But like Teresa said in this, that her parents are gone, and so at least they don't have to see where they are now, and that they passed away thinking that their children were okay, that is the darkest thing to hear on this show that is about family ever. And you have to keep reminding yourself of how much they were in each other's lives. And so for new cast members like Danielle or even Jen Aiden and Fuda, I mean, mainly Danielle and Fuda, is that it's hard to take anything that they say sometimes seriously because they have not been there the amount of years as these other ladies. You know, when Danielle will say like, oh, I miss my friendship with, was she saying I miss my friendship with Jen or what? But you're like, what, really? You only been on the show like 2 years. Do you really miss it that much? You probably didn't talk on the off season. How could you really miss a friendship? But all of these other ladies, they've been friends for years. So it really means something. But anybody new in that cast really has an uphill battle to fight because everything else is just steeped in years and years and years of trauma. So it's hard to get these new storylines out there. I mean, the only thing I guess we can be thankful is that John Fuda didn't like pop in at any point at Rails of like, I heard you're looking for another housewife. Like, that didn't happen. But yeah, those are just some beginning thoughts. I know you guys have probably thought it out way more than I have, but that's where I'm at right now with Real Housewives of New Jersey. So that was the finale. I guess next week we watch the two different sets of ladies watch the finale in Rail's restaurant, which is always great TV when we watch other people watch the show that we just watched. Listen, they did that with Vanderpump Rules to great effect at the reunion. So we'll see how this works. I don't have a lot of high hopes for any kind of new information or anything coming out, but there must be something. But it's only one episode. And also, Watch What Happens Live was great tonight. Had Dolores and Danny Pellegrino killed it. But then there was this comedian, Andrea Lopez, that does the best Teresa imitation. And I will tell you, I mean, I'm sure she's been working forever, but man, that was a great opportunity tonight. Star was born. She crushed it, cracking Andy up. I was cracking up. Just so damn good. Oh my God. I would love to hire her for a party. Or I would love to hire her for just the podcast and just have a whole conversation with her as Teresa. My God, that was good. I really recommend you watch her imitation. I just followed her on Instagram because I was like, she does it so well. There are certain performers when they lock into an imitation and it's just so good that anything they say makes you laugh. Oh God, she's like right in the pocket of greatness with that imitation. Okay, so that's my thoughts on Real Housewives of New Jersey. And now let's get to it. Remember, you guys, patreon.com, patreon.com/so bad it's good. I did a 2-hour Q&A on there today where I answered all your questions. We talked a little Jersey, Vanderpump, Welcome to Plathville, Gypsy Rose, my favorite books. We talked about everything. So that's over on the Patreon. And remember, we're recapping season 1 of Vanderpump Rules over there. We're 3 episodes in, and it's been a blast. So go be a baddie, sign up with us there. And remember, if you like this show, and I don't know, maybe some of you guys are watching this on YouTube, go subscribe to the podcast, rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And without further ado, the one, the only, Sophie Ross. Have a great start to your week, everybody.